You're listening to the weekly parsha podcast, recorded with Hashem's never-ending assistance in Ramat Beit Shemesh, Israel, 5775, 2015. This week's parsha is Parshas Devarim, and Shabbos itself, this coming Friday night, this evening, is going to be Tisha B'av. However, although it's Tisha B'av, we push off the fast. On Shabbos, we're not allowed to show any Avelis. We're not allowed to show any mourning, even a great mourning over the destruction of the temple. We don't do that on Shabbos. We push it off instead to Motzi Shabbos, and Sunday is when we're going to commemorate and relive the destruction of the temple and all of those things that occurred to the Jewish people throughout history. And one of the things that we discuss almost every year is the fact that Parshas Devarim, this week's parsha, falls out right before Tisha B'av. We read it on the Shabbos before Tisha B'av. And this year we actually read it on Tisha B'av itself, which is interesting. And the question is why? Why is Devarim always the introduction to Tisha B'av? What is there to learn? And this is something we've spoken about numerous times. And each year we have a different answer. And I'd like to share with you my thought for this year, which is based on the Medrash at the very beginning, Medrash Rabbah, at the very beginning of Parshas Devarim. It says like this. There are two different ideas that are taught in the Medrash, two different concepts that don't really seem to be directly interrelated. However, I believe that they are, and I believe that there's a beautiful lesson and a depth and a teaching for us, for Tisha B'av, that we can take with us from the Medrash. So chapter 1, verse 1, it says, Ela hadvarim asher diber Moshe el kol Yisrael. These are the words that Moses said to the entire people of Israel. Be'ever HaYarden, on the side of the Jordan River, B'midbar Barava, Malsuf, etc. The verse goes on. But it speaks about these matters. And the Medrash says something very interesting. Ela Hadvarim, it could be, and this is my understanding of the Medrash, but Ela Hadvarim means these are the words. These words. The question is like this, says the Medrash. Is it permitted to write the Torah in a different language? Can we translate the Torah into other languages, or does it have to be taught in the original language, in the Hebrew, that it was originally written, it was originally spoken in? So the Medrash says, Halacha, Adam Yisrael Moshe Mutter Loi, Lichtov Sefer Torah B'Chalashin V'chulei. There's a question in halacha, in the Jewish law. A person of the Jewish people who would like to write a Torah in a different language, is it permitted? Kach shanu chachamim. And this is what our sages taught. Ein bein svarim l'tfilin u'mezuzos el shasvarim nichtav m'chalashin. The difference between a Sefer Torah, a Torah scroll, as opposed to tefillin and mezuzos, is that a Sefer Torah can be written in any language. Rabbi Gamliel says his own shita, his own opinion, which is that a Torah can only be written, it's only a kosher Sefer Torah if it's written in Greek, because the language of Yavanis, of Greek, is a beautiful language, and therefore it's appropriate that the Torah be translated into that language. So the question that immediately strikes me here is how does the Medrash know that it's permitted to write the Torah in a different language? Ela Hadvarim, these are the words. It sounds like it's only these words, specifically these words. So the Eitz Yosef here brings that later on in the Torah, the verse says, Hoyel Moshe Beiras HaTorah Hazois. Moses went and he explained the Torah. Says our Chazal, our sages say, that this means that he translated the Torah into 70 different languages. So from the fact that Moshe took painstakingly went to explain the Torah, so that no matter who they were, no matter what their languages were, they would still be able to understand it, we see that it's permitted to write the Torah in whatever language is necessary, so that the Jewish person, it's very meduyak here, it's very, you see from the Medrash itself, it says, a Jew who would like to translate the Torah, clearly it's so that he'd be able to understand, he'd be able to do God's will, he'd be able to have that relationship with Hashem that Hashem expects of him. It's also very interesting because at this point in time, the entire Jewish people were Egyptian. They had just come out of Egypt. Even if it was 40 years later, the only other language that they might know besides their Hebrew would be Egyptian. They didn't know all the other 70 languages. So if Moshe is translating the Torah into these 70 languages, clearly it's not just for that generation alone, but it's for all future generations, that we should always be able to have access to the Torah no matter what language we speak. Now, that's the first part of the Medrash. Medrash goes on and says something which doesn't seem to be so related to the previous statement of the Medrash. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be He, said, Re'eh l'shana shel Torah ma chaviva. See how endeared, how beloved is the language of the Torah. Shemirape es haloshin. That the Torah, the language of the Torah, the way the Torah speaks, has the ability to cure the tongue, to cure one's tongue. And the Eitz Yosef immediately points out that this is something that we see from Moshe Rabbeinu. And this is something that actually is going to be stated at the end of the Medrash. But Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses himself, when God first tells him that I want you to be the one who's going to be Goyeles Yisrael, you're going to be the redeemer of the Jewish people, Moshe Rabbeinu says, Lav bal dvarim anochi. I'm not somebody who's able to speak. I don't have words. I have trouble speaking. Kvad peh. He said he was hard of speech. And yet, at the end of the Medrash, we're going to skip and come back here, but at the end of the Medrash it says, Kevan shezocha l'Torah, since Moses merited to inherit the Torah, to have the Torah, to live a life of Torah, nisrapi l'shaynei, Moshe's tongue was cured. V'hischil l'daber dvarim, he was able to begin to speak. Minayin, how do we know this? Mimashe karinu be'inyan eila hadvarim asher dira Moshe. The very same dvarim, he said, I'm not a man of words. That very same man and those very same words, now these are the words that he's speaking. And interestingly, and this could be the beginning of the connection, but interestingly, he not only did he speak in Hebrew, not only did he have the words to speak in Hebrew, but he had the words to speak in 70 languages. He was able to speak such that it would be heard for all times, for all generations, for all peoples in all languages. But that, says the Medrash, is the power of the Torah, the language of the Torah. The Torah has the ability to cure the tongue, to cure a person, minayin. Now we're going back to the beginning of this piece in the Medrash. The Medrash says, how do we know this? Shekein ksiv, marpei lashon eitz chaim. The eitz chaim, the tree of life, which is a reference to the Torah, cures the tongue. How do we know indeed that the Torah is referred to as a tree of life? We know this from the verse, eitz chaim hilama chazikim ba. The Torah is referred to as a tree of life to those who hold on to it. Now, I'm going to continue reading the Medrash, but as we're reading it, just try to understand, think about, why is it, or what is the idea that the Torah rectifies the tongue, it cures the tongue. It has the ability to take someone like Moshe Rabbeinu, who has great difficulty speaking, and it has the ability to transform him to be the orator of all times, the greatest speaker of all times. What is the idea behind that? What is the depth of that? What is it coming to teach us? Now, the Medrash continues and says, Teid alacha, you should know. Very interesting. In the future time, when Mashiach comes, when the Messiah arrives, or perhaps in the world to come, Hashem, God is going to cause very special trees to grow. What's so special about these trees? They have the ability to cure the tongue, to cure speech. Shenemar, as the verse says, as a verse in Ezekiel chapter 47 verse 12, on the river, and I assume it's speaking about the river of the Garden of Eden. So on the edges of this river, from either side, there will be coming up kol eitz ma'achal, all these different trees that provide sustenance, that are for food. So it's speaking about the future, and it's saying that there's going to be these special trees. Now, minayin shirufua shaloshen, how do you know that the characteristic of the food of these trees is such that it cures the tongue, cures the ability to speak? Shneimar, v'yapiryei lamachal v'aleo l'srufa. The end of the verse there says that the fruits will be for eating, and its leaves will be for cures. The leaves will be used for their curative powers. Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shua ben Levi, now in explaining this, so we have an argument between Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Chad amar l'trafyain, one says that it's going to be used for its curative powers. V'chad amar kol shu ilem v'lo yetemenu l'shaynai. The other one says that it's not just going to be like a general cure-all, but rather anyone who is mute, who is unable to speak, and then he eats from these fruits, so his tongue will be cured. And this sharpening, or this ability that he gains to speak, comes through the learning of the Torah. How do we know that it comes through the learning of the Torah and not just from eating the fruit? As the verse says, it speaks about the fact that the trees are growing from this side and that. And whenever we have the words from this side and that, it's a reference to the Torah. Shenemar, as the verse says, mizeh u'mizeh hen ksuvim, in regards to the Aseret HaDibros, the 10 Commandments, so it says that they were written from this side and that. So it's a reference in the verse, the fact that the trees are growing from this side and that, it's a reference to the fact that the curative powers of these trees comes through the Torah, through the learning of Torah. And then the Medrash finishes off with what we quoted earlier, what we read already, which is that it's possible also to learn it from Moshe Rabbeinu himself. That Moses originally, he said, I don't have the ability to speak. And then over here we see that he has the ability to speak. He's been cured through his learning of the Torah, through his bringing the Torah into the world, through being this conduit of Torah. Now, in trying to understand what does it mean, or what is the concept of the fact that the Torah cures a person's tongue, what is the idea? We can really look at the question from a different angle. We can look at it, Moshe Rabbeinu, he's unable to speak. Hashem says to him, I want you to redeem the Jewish people. Go and ask Pharaoh to let the Jewish people go. And Moshe says, I'm not somebody who is able to speak. This is a job that involves speech. I don't have that capability. I don't have that talent. And Hashem says, who's the one who places the tongue in a person? It's me. You go, and I will speak through you. Don't worry about it. That's the conversation that Hashem has with Moshe. Now, the question that we can ask on that is, indeed, why? If Hashem knew Moshe Rabbeinu is the destined Goyal, he's the Redeemer, he's Mashiach, he's the Messiah of that generation. He's going to take the Jewish people out of Egypt. And he needs to be able to speak. The Messiah is someone who needs to be able to speak. That's his power. His power is in his prayer. His power is in his ability to convince the Jewish people that now it's time to go. His power is in his ability to convince Pharaoh to let the Jewish people leave. Why is it, if Hashem knows that this is the person, this is the one, he's the Goyal, he's the Redeemer, why did Hashem make him with an inability to speak? Fundamentally, this is his job, is to speak, to convince people, to move people, to change people. Why is it that Moshe Rabbeinu, the Goyal, the Redeemer, can't speak? Why did Hashem make him that way? Moshe Rabbeinu is a good taina. He has a good statement. He has a good excuse. God, I can't do it. I can't redeem them. I can't speak. What's the answer that Hashem says? The answer is, it's beautiful and it's deep. The answer is, as I understand it, that Hashem specifically made him unable to speak. Specifically unable to speak. We don't mention Moshe one time, not once, in the Haggadah, on Leil Pesach, on Passover. We don't speak about Moshe. Moses' name is not there. Why? Why do we skip him? The Torah is full of Moshe. Moshe is, he's the one. It's Torah's Moshe. Moshe wrote the Torah. He was the kli. He was the conduit. We always recognize the one who was the conduit for good to come into the world. The answer is because it's not about Moshe. And the very idea that Moshe can't speak, when Moshe comes and is goyal, when Moshe comes and speaks, it's so clear that he's not speaking. It's so clear that the only reason that he's speaking now is because he's completely been mevatel himself, nullified his own ego to God. There is only God. And the words that he's speaking are only God's words. Because Moshe can't talk. Moses can't speak. He doesn't have his own words. I can't talk. And what's the tikkun of that? The tikkun of that is through the Torah. What is the Torah? When we talk about the Torah, what is the Torah? What is this idea of the Torah? The idea of the Torah is, this is the will of Hashem. This is the will of Hashem. When I am mevatel myself, when I give myself over to the care of Hashem, when I give myself over to God completely, I have nothing of my own. I'm completely giving myself to Hashem's will. Our will is to do your will. Hashem, your will is what I want, not mine. I don't want my will, I just want your will. And that's Moshe. He's the An of Mikol Adam. I don't want anything of my own. Hashem, whatever you say, I will do. Whatever you say, I will say. When that's who we are, when that's our mahus, when that's what we become through the Torah, so then there's a marpei lashon. Our tongue is cured. What does that mean, our tongue is cured? So for Moshe Rabbeinu, it's very clear. He couldn't speak before. Now he can speak. He couldn't be a leader before. Now he can lead. He couldn't convince anybody of anything. Now he can convince them. He couldn't teach anything. He couldn't bring people close to Hashem. Now he can. It's very clear what it means for Moshe. What does it mean for me? What does it mean for you? I can speak very well. I think if we think about it carefully, we know our Chazal tell us that it's an unkelus. The pasuk says that when Hashem created man, Hashem blows into him a ruach, a spirit of life. And the unkelus translates it there, ruach mamala, a spirit of speaking. The mahus, the essence of who the human being is the speaking spirit, the ability to speak. And with my speech, I interact with the world. With my speech, I can hurt someone with my speech. Or I can lift someone up with my speech. I can convince somebody of something. I can affect the world. I can bring goodness into the world. Or heaven forbid the opposite. When we say that the Torah cures speech, what we're really saying is that the Torah cures the human being, the essence of the human being, the creative power of the human being, all that the human being represents in the world, which is encompassed, encapsulated in the word lashon, in the tongue, in the speech of a human being. Now, there's something really amazing and interesting here. What is the connection here between the fact that the Torah is marpei lashon, the Torah cures the tongue, the Torah cures the human being from his inabilities, the Torah cures him of his selfishness? What is the connection between that and the fact that the Torah can be written in any language? And I think that there's a very beautiful idea that this Medrash is coming to teach us. The Medrash says that it can be written according to one sheet, according to one opinion, in all of the languages, the 70 languages, as we mentioned from the Eitz Yosef. That Moshe Rabbeinu, when he explained it in all 70 languages. Now, we've shared in the past that the number 70, we have Shivim Panim LaTorah, we have 70 different facets or aspects or dimensions or ways of looking at the Torah. We have 70 different angles. What does that mean? The Torah is one. There's one Torah. But when it comes down into this world, so the Torah becomes fractured in a certain sense. There are 70 different aspects of the Torah that, depending on the person, depending on their chelik in Torah, their portion of the Torah, their understanding of God, that's how they will approach their relationship with Hashem. That's the number 70. There are 70 nations of the world. The Jewish people are a single nation, a koilo. We are the root, the soul of all of the 70 nations. But the 70 different nations represent the 70 different koiches, 70 different powers, 70 different aspects of reality. Yaakov Avinu, Jacob, is one person with 70 progeny, as the Torah tells us. He has 70 offspring. All of these represent different spiritual koiches, spiritual powers that are reflected in the world, in a lower dimension, we could say, from a Yaakov. Yaakov is the one who's the koil. He's the one who includes all of them. Now, when we say that the Torah can be translated into 70 languages, it's an amazing thing. Because what it means is, no matter where a person finds himself, no matter how far a person finds himself from the source, from the Torah, from a relationship with Hashem, no matter how impossible it seems, no matter how many impediments stand in his way, whether it's something wrong with his ability to speak, something wrong in his emotional ability, in his interactive ability, in his social ability, even in his spiritual ability. It seems like he's an immoral person, he's completely drawn to sin. It's impossible for him to learn the Torah. It's impossible for him to have a relationship with Hashem. He's no good. He's born that way. The Torah is written, the Torah is explained in 70 languages. No matter how far fallen, no matter how broken the oneness seems, it's still possible for that Torah to speak to me. No matter how far I seem to be, the Torah reaches down to me and talks to me in my language. The Torah is marpei lashon. The Torah has the ability to cure my speech, cure my specific language, my aspect. Perhaps it's the 70th of the 70 languages. My shard of the oneness of reality. The Torah is the unity that reaches down into the darkness, into the brokenness of reality, and says, you can't speak, you can speak. I had this idea, this really beautifully, we mentioned, I think it was last week, we mentioned that the difference between sight and speech, sight and hearing. Sight, when you're looking at something, you can see all of the picture at once. When it comes to speaking, when it comes to words, when it comes to hearing, you hear one word and another word and another word and another word. And when you get to the end of the sentence, the words come together and there's a concept. And you have that concept. Moshe says, I can't speak. I can't bring these ideas together. I'm so broken. I'm in this world of brokenness, this world of 70, which represents or parallels the idea of speech. Broken down, broken. And Moshe says, I can't even talk. I can't even bring the 70 together, bring those pieces, those words together in a flowing manner so that there can be a communication and then we can re-access the oneness which happens at the end of that sentence. And Hashem says, Mi sam pela adam. Hashem says, who's the one who gives you that mouth? Who is the one who has the ability to bring back the broken pieces back to reality, back to oneness? Put those pieces together. Make someone able to speak. Moshe is able to speak in the end. He's the greatest speaker of all time, and he speaks to each one of us in our language, through the 70 languages that the Torah is translated into. Now, on Tisha B'av, something very interesting happens. The halacha is, the law is, that one is not permitted to learn Torah on Tisha B'av. And, if we look at this in light of what we've been speaking about, and perhaps this could be part of the message of why we read Devarim before Tisha B'av, if we look at it in light of that, so, you could think like this: on Tisha B'av, we're so broken, we're so far, we're so shattered. Not only don't we have the 70 pieces of that oneness, not only don't we have a piece, a 70th perhaps of those 70th pieces, we're so broken, we're so far, that it seems like there's no hope, and we will never hear that voice. Eicha, we say on Tisha B'av, we say, where are you? How did this happen? We ask this question without an answer. We don't answer the question. We say, how could it be? How could it be that this happened? We have a question, and we have no answer. We don't have the words to answer the question. But what's interesting is that although we don't have the words, and we don't have the word, the Divrei Torah, and it seems like we're so far from God and we're so destroyed that we can never access it. What's interesting is, and I want to bring it back to this Medrash, because in the Medrash, it references and trying to explain that the Torah is that which cures a person, and in the future time, we talk about this future, this Olam Haba, this world of rectification, when things are all rectified. When we get to that place, so these trees grow and the fruit has the ability to cure a person's tongue, to cure a person's language. And it's beautiful and it's apropos that the parallel to the Torah, the Torah itself is like a portal. It's a window. It's a way to get into that Olam Haba, to the future place, the future time. And the Torah itself fixes a person and transports a person to that rectification, which we call the rectification of the tongue, where the human being is rectified at his root. But although on Tisha B'av we don't learn Torah, we don't seem to have access to that place. For me, one of the most powerful times, the most powerful psukim that we read on Tisha B'av in the Kinnis, we read the saddest stuff. We read about the destructions that happened in the times of the temple. We read about the Inquisition. We read about the Crusades. We read from Reb Shimon Schwab wrote about the Holocaust. We remember all of the destructions, all the questions, all of the shards, all the brokenness. But we also read psukim that remind us what's going to be in the future. What's going to be Beshuvi L'Yerushalayim. It's only a hint. We can't really talk about it because Tisha B'av is a day of asking without the answer. But we do mention it. We do refer to it. To me, that's the most beautiful, the most moving part of Tisha B'av is a pasuk like Ki nicham Hashem tzio, nicham kol chorveiseha, when Hashem is going to console Zion, console all of the destroyed places of Zion. Vayasam midbar ke'eden, Hashem is going to reverse the wilderness and make it into an Eden. Arvasa ki gan Hashem, make it into a garden. Sasam v'simcha yimatzeh ba. There will be joy and happiness there. Taida v'kol zimra, thanks and sounds of song. That to me is so powerfully moving. Here we are, we're so far away from Hashem. We can't even say words of Torah. We can't even access that rectification. We're so broken. The shards are so split apart. It's like a glass jar. We can't put those pieces together, it seems. But we do mention that there is a time, there will be a time where all of the shards will be rectified. And it is through Torah. It's true on Tisha B'av. We can't touch it. We can't actually access it on Tisha B'av. We're just too broken. And it's so important to remember that. But at the same time, and even within it, the saddest or the greatest irony or the greatest hope that we have is the fact that although we're so broken today, there is a future, there's an Olam Haba, there's a Mashiach, there's a times of the Messiah, when all the shards will be brought back together. And yes, it will be, as we learn from Devarim, it will be through the Torah. It will be through trying to access Hashem's will, through trying to understand what is our purpose, how can we use our speech, the essence of the human being, how can we access that essence, which is communication, which is relationship, which is coming close to God, which is learning His Torah. And although on Tisha B'av we don't have the ability to speak, we just ask the question, we don't have the answers, but we do know the answer. And that's why it's always read right before Tisha B'av, because on Tisha B'av we can't say the answers. We can't access the answers. But we need to go in there knowing that there is an answer, and the answer is through relationship with Hashem. I want to bless you, and please bless me back, that Hashem should help us to be able to put those words together, to be able to speak, to take all the brokenness in our lives, all the parts of ourselves that aren't aligned with Hashem's will. Hashem should help us, you and me and all of us. Hashem should help us to be able to speak. He should cure our language, cure our tongues, and we should merit to see the rebuilding of the temple, to see these trees growing, and we should merit to eat of their fruits, and that the Torah should cure us and bring us into a relationship with Hashem. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful Shabbos. This podcast was made possible through the gracious donations of listeners like you. For more podcasts like this, please visit www.arigoldwag.com or search on iTunes Ari Goldwag.